woman with a baby in her arms boarded a train at Jabalpur along with an older man who seated her and quickly left, disappearing into the crowded platform. When the train started moving, the woman panicked because she could not find her husband anywhere, and the little baby in her arms wailed from the heat and the noise in that compartment. That young woman was my mother, and the man who deserted her on the train journey to Bombay, where he appeared over a month later, was my father. The baby was my sister. My father was a leader of the National Railway Mazdoor Union that represents thousands of railwaymen in this country. The day he disappeared from that train, the police were on the lookout for him to arrest him on the eve of a railway strike that was all set to cripple the country. I stand here today to tell you the story of my mother, my father, and a handful of people in my life who inspired me to rise above my circumstances and to paint a canvas for myself that would otherwise be deemed audacious and impossible. My starkest childhood memory is of a visit to the prison cell where they kept my father after the collapse of the railway strike. Amma wept when she realized that her husband was in jail, but she composed herself and made a meal for him, and we were off to jail to see our father in his prison cell. For the longest time, I never understood why the police made us eat a portion of that meal before they would allow him to eat even a portion of it. It was only years later, as a journalist covering the labor beat, that I realized the tremendous influence that labor leaders have over their members. Last year, for the first time in 40 years, my 82-year-old father spoke to us about his stay at the notorious Arthur Road prison. Since he was a political prisoner and not a convict, he was kept in a temporary jail cell along with other under trials. That cell had open holes for toilets, and the food they were served was infested with vermin. My father went without food for 3 days, surviving on just water because the conditions were so filthy. For the better part of our childhood, our life was all about making do with very little. Amma raised us with just a fraction of the salary that our father brought home. The rest, he gave away to other families who needed that money more than we did. One day, my younger brother was paraded in front of his class by his school teacher because he wore torn shoes from inside which his toes peeped out. Amma broke down that one time, but mostly she simply raised us using her own resources. When there were school fees to be paid and money to be given for a school picnic, she pawned her jewelry piece by piece till one day there was not a piece of jewelry left on her body. Amma could have walked away from that life of hardship that our father offered us, but she chose to stand by the man she loved and became a partner in his journey of making the world a better place for workers. Our life of hardship, however, did not mean that our childhood was a dreadful place. What we did not get in material comforts, we got from the sheer variety of experiences that our very unconventional life offered us. When our father disappeared from that train, he headed to Bombay, where his friends gave him shelter and a few disguises so that he could move around the city, mustering up courage and support for the railway strike without being arrested by the police. He got a conductor's uniform that allowed him to roam around in Bombay without being asked for a ticket. Some days, he wore a watchman's khaki shorts and wielding a stick, he roamed around railway colonies, happily discussing strike strategies with his railway colleagues. From my mother and from the brave women in her family, including a trio of great aunts, I learned all about determination, self-esteem, and sacrifice. In the early 1940s, one of my mother's aunts, Minakshi, took a train journey from a tiny coastal village in Kerala and headed to Mumbai in search of a job for herself and a better future for her family. She had no contacts in Bombay, and other than the 2 saris and a few hundred rupees that she carried in a cloth bag close to her bosom, she had no other belongings. What she did have, however, was a passionate determination to fulfill herself. And if that meant that she had to travel to a faraway city, she was more than happy to do it. Months later, when her family received a letter from her, it said that she was training to be a nurse in a hospital in Mumbai. The family did not know it then, but that was a turning point in the lives of those 4 sisters and their young brother. My life and that of my family, including my mother, who was Minakshi's eldest niece, would not be the same had it not been for the singularly courageous journey that she undertook all those years ago. Minakshi worked relentlessly for several years across some of Mumbai's largest government hospitals, eventually retiring as a matron in one of them. Minakshi and her 2 sisters chose to remain single so that they could fulfill themselves and look after their younger siblings. They had been orphaned young, and so the responsibility of looking after those children lay on their shoulders. They were landed gentry and could have lived off the fruit of that land, but each of them was driven by a need to do something more meaningful with their lives. Minakshi found a calling in nursing. Rukmini, the eldest sister, became a beloved school teacher, and Kanakam chose to be a homemaker who nurtured her family. It was because of their progressive attitude that my mother was one of the first women in her community to go to residential school and study in English. They have been gone for a long time now, those wonderful matriarchs who charted their own course at a time in society when women had very little say even about their own lives. My own daughter is 22 today and lives in another country, secure under the protective gaze of her entire family. Minakshi was just 18 when she made that memorable journey to Mumbai. I wonder about them sometimes. Those 3 women, were they ever scared, lonely, overwhelmed by their responsibilities? How did they manage to live life independently without a man to watch over them? Remember, that was a tough thing to pull off in the early 1900s. I wonder about Minakshi. Did she ever feel friendless and lost in a big city that was so different from the gentle pace of life back in her village? Did they never want to get married, have children, create a world of their own? We will never know. What I do know, however, that my life has been inspired by my parents and those great aunts. Always an average child, with neither good looks nor a great academic record, I was inspired by Minakshi Amma and traveled to another city to become a journalist. That has been an exciting, challenging, and hugely rewarding journey that has brought me face to face with my vulnerabilities and also with several very special people. Journalism gave me a ringside view of life at its best and its worst. As a journalist, I witnessed the horror of human hatred when I covered the Mumbai riots after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. But equally, it gave me some rare opportunities, such as that wonderful meeting with Dr. Christian Bernard, the man who successfully sculpted the world's first human heart transplant. I still have a glove signed by him that he gave me on that meeting. My career as a journalist put me in contact with some of the world's best minds from every field of life: sports people, artists, actors, authors, statesmen. I'm glad I made that journey for myself. When something happened at my workplace a few years ago that clashed with my idea of what is just and right, I walked away from that job and from the career that I had painstakingly built over 23 years. It was a traumatic time for me. I had no job, no money, no prospects, and no plan B on which to build my future life. In retrospect, that was possibly the best thing that happened to me. Out on a limb, I was propelled to do what I had been putting off for a long, long time: writing a book. Leading Ladies, my debut book, is about the inspirational journeys of some of this country's most accomplished and admired women. These women let nothing and nobody distract them from their chosen goal. They questioned convention, broke norms, went to places where women had not been before, and when they got there, they reached out to other women like them who wanted to scale the same heights. At the end of it, I met a wonderful woman, Gandhian Ela Bhatt, who has given a life of dignity to over 1 million unlettered Indian women by empowering them with livelihood skills. That was possibly one of the most inspirational moments of my life. Legacy, my next book, also brought me in contact with a new set of men and women who have in many ways changed the way we live our lives. From these pioneering men and women, I learned to stop fearing failure, to grab every opportunity to expand my boundaries, and to step out of my comfort zone to explore my full potential. From them, I learned to seek and to find knowledge and to share of that knowledge generously. I learned about the virtue of mentoring those in need, and I learned about the power of positive thought. From my parents and from the people who touched my lives, I learned that there is no substitute for passion and hard work. If somebody had told me at the age of 16 that I would be a reputed journalist, a best-selling author, and a woman known for innovative concepts in promoting the art of writing, even I wouldn't have believed it. But that's exactly what I've done. Last year, I started writing in the park, an initiative designed to get children off their gadgets, off their laptops, mobile phones, out into the open to explore their creativity by writing in the park with me. Last month, I started telling our stories, a voluntary project in which I teach Pune's senior citizens the art of writing down their unique stories in a gripping and creative manner. I cannot tell you how blown away I am by the kind of stories that they want to share with me. But more than all of this, I have learned that all around us are the stories of inspiration of men and women who have dared to dream. I could have remained that average girl from a lower middle class family, living in the wrong address in the wrong part of town, oppressed by the conservative norms of society. Instead, I chose to be inspired by the men and the women in my family who refused to let their circumstances pull me down. If I am what I am today because I have adopted their fearless attitude towards life and their unquenchable thirst to fulfill themselves. And if I could do it coming from where I did, then each of you in this auditorium can make that happen too, if you will just look around and be inspired. Thank you.